Again, Moin. It's been too long. I'm really glad. Welcome to MNN. I'm really happy to welcome you to the program. Glad we could finally put it together.
Glad to be here.
And we got to get in better touch with one another. And in the audience, welcome very much to Conversations. Our guest this segment is Moin Ansari, and he's the editor of Rupee News. I would even spell it out here. He's got a very rich and growing website that I've spent a great deal of time at because it's so interesting and so up to date. And I would just like to say, we're going to put it in the graphics at the end, but it's www, and it's RUPEENEWS.com. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And he's also, if not parenthetically perhaps, but really maybe what we're going to be talking about, he's the president, if I'm not mistaken, of the American Joint Multi-Faith Association. And might as well give them the link for that, is it AJMA, is that correct?
That's ajma.org, yeah.
Yeah, AJMA.org. And Moin, we've done programming in the past, but welcome. It's so good to see you.
Wonderful to see you.
Really good. I wonder if you could share with us and for the audience your background, please.
Sure.
Well, a little of your born and raised and educational stuff, and then we'll get in. We want to talk a great deal about South Asia and also some of the larger problems confronting the human condition. But share your background for the audience. It's been quite a while since you and I spoke.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. This is my third time here, so it's always a pleasure being here. I was born in Pakistan. I came to the United States as a student in 1980. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't come here as a political or economic refugee. I came here because I wanted to be here.
Okay.
My parents went to England, and my grandparents also went to Oxford, Cambridge, the route. Most of them went back. When I told
they were academics.
Academics,
yeah.
My grandfather was a judge. My father was an executive in an oil company.
Okay.
One of the smallest in the world.
But that was in Pakistan?
In Pakistan, yeah.
Okay.
So we come from an upper middle class type of background.
Mm-hmm.
And I always joke about that. I was born in a United Christian Hospital, went to school at St. Mary's Academy, and, I thought I'd never wear a blue blazer in my life again, and here we are.
Standard costume, right from Central Casting, yeah.
Right from...
I happen to have one, too, yeah.
Grade 4, I think, with the crest on here.
Yeah.
So I came here, then I graduated, did my bachelor's, did my postgraduate work at UCLA, and then did an MBA from Cal State.
You did MBA, but you did the undergraduate work in?
University of Arkansas when Bill Clinton was governor there.
Wow, okay, yeah.
So
but you did it in what? Where did you focus? I mean, South Asia or
no, actually,
you also got a cyber background.
My background is industrial engineering, manufacturing engineering, and an MBA. I have a BA in History and International Relations from Pakistan. From University of Karachi.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I think that's my passion, my love, in terms of writing and reading and understanding international relations and how things happen. I'm very good at analysis and seeing how things are and what chess games are being played, which great games are happening in West Asia.
We ought to get you to Washington, sir, because that's a really important question confronting us, yeah? You've been interested in that. So, but briefly, let's mention, you have done a lot of work, your MBA, and then you've done work with the things cyber.
Yeah, I'm a computer science, I'm in computers.
Right.
And work in large-scale ERP systems and work for consulting companies, and that's my other life, where I get my paychecks from.
Yeah, right. And you do that entrepreneurially?
I do it partly entrepreneurially and partly as employee. So
okay.
And I'd rather not mention the names of the companies I work for, but they're Fortune 50 companies where I work at the VP director level.
Fortune 50?
Yeah, Fortune 50.
Oh, so that gets to be rather large.
Large company. Large companies.
Right.
We're not talking about PC support here.
But I think mostly we want to concentrate on South Asia.
South Asia, yeah.
Because it's in the, what's going on now is really hard. You're reading it all carefully, and your site is one of the best places with really up-to-date analysis and information.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No,
Rupee News, we put that together. There's a team of people writing about it, and it's what we were talking earlier, you and I. It gives you news from the other perspective, what doesn't get through the clearinghouse of the 6 corporations that own the media.
Okay, wait a minute. The 6 clearinghouses that own the media of the world, United States?
United States, world, something like that, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting concept. Yeah, that would be like Reuters and AP, or what do you mean?
Yes, well,
it's worth mentioning, I think.
Yeah, well, you know, Rupert Murdoch has a large organization, huge organization, and then it filters down to Dogpatch USA in Tennessee and everywhere else. But Murdoch's organization is one of the largest.
But you mentioned 6.
Yeah.
Did you have 6 actually in mind that
I have 6.
I can in terms of the media of the United States, and how much competition, effective competition, is there coming from other sources, whether it's Jazeera or whatever else? There might be coming to compete with the big guys, as it were.
Yeah, the competition is.
Now we're talking electronic media.
Print and electronic seem to be merging now, right?
Yeah, right.
It just seems to be
it
that
seems a lot of the print's going to be going the way of the buggy whip or something. It seems there's no business model that even New York Times is in trouble now. But anyway,
they sold their building. Part of it.
It's good to get a sense of where the media is, and you're keeping track of that, right?
Yeah. So in terms of getting our news, so the internet is a fantastic place where it's just absolutely wonderful. You know, you can get information, you can get real information that you know is not tainted or doesn't have an agenda, and it's somebody's personal opinion without huge corporate backing. And Al Jazeera is doing some stuff, but Al Jazeera, but there are others also. And I get, if I was going to do a checkmark list on where do I get my news from, I get it from the internet.
From the internet. Well, that's practically everything's. I think give it a little time. Everything's going to be on the internet.
Yes.
It just seems to me it's like the DNA of our world society.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've seen that.
So
you're
you get
aware of that.
you can get a good perspective. You can balance things out. You can see where the news is coming from. And then you can make your own informed decisions.
Back to this idea of the concentration of the media. 6. It used to be Ben Beck-Dickian. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He used to keep track, and back in the old days when cable was getting going, there were 55 major companies. It's down to about 5 or 6 now that virtually control 85% of everything that anybody sees or reads. That's really an important consideration. And you say, now they are all also jumping on the cyber bandwagon. They're all getting their own presence out there and so forth. But is it a problem, in your view, in terms of people, citizens trying to understand, or scholars for that matter, trying to understand what's actually going on, that there is this concentration, or what? I mean,
I think there's
just to sort of lay the groundwork.
I think there is this concentration. I think there is this for the citizens and for scholars and for intellectuals to get to the real news. Goebel said it best a very long time ago. He said, if you repeat it enough, it becomes the truth. And I hear and see a lot of things that WMDs in Iraq is a classic example.
Mission accomplished.
A mission accomplished. And you repeat it enough number of times that you start getting some people who say, well, there's smoke, there's fire, it must be true. And we found out the exact opposite. That is, the war in Afghanistan is going great. That went on for several years, and now we find out that 80% of the country is in the hand of what's called the Taliban. I would call them 38, 39 insurgent groups fighting the occupation.
Thank you. You can put a true face on this. That's a propagandistic term.
So you put this big umbrella of the demonized Taliban, which were created by the CIA and the Pakistanis and the Saudis. And Congressman Rohrabacher in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee said very recently that the Taliban were created by the CIA funding.
You've seen Charlie Wilson's War.
And I've seen Charlie Wilson's War. And more importantly, I've read the book.
Do you like the film?
I write the book. I write the book. I like the book.
Okay.
It gives
but what about the film? The film is what most matters these days. The multimedia and film is where the impressions are getting out in a broad scale. But on both terms, what do you think?
I think the book had more information. The movie lays the background, and for the curious, it helps you get a little bit of an understanding. Like Syriana, I think was Syriana was a good movie.
HBO,
and that was a good movie that for the intellectually curious they can go behind. And Hollywood sometimes comes out really fantastic.
Well, for good or ill, I think the world's going multimedia. You know, I think that's why the newspapers are in trouble. In fact, the whole world of Marshall McLuhan with the linear perception and everything's going electronic, quick. And so multimedia, for good or ill, I think we're moving. They're morphing to the cell phone now with multimedia.
So my iPhone does everything.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do with a cell phone. I got a cell phone a guy gave me, and I got 142 pages of things you can do with this little thing that sits in the palm of your hand. And that's the future of communication.
Oh, absolutely.
But we still do have this concentration of control over the main.
What do you think of this, Harold? I'd like to hear your views on this concentration, or is there a clearinghouse, or is there not a clearinghouse, and how does that affect the intellectuals?
I don't know. I'm not sure myself. I know that Mr. Benedictine, I liked him and his concentrating, and you've got so many different kinds of things. I mean, so many different sources of that now. You've got YouTube. I use that. It's very democratizing. You can get the thing out. But in terms of influencing the overall pattern, I'm still looking for intellectual patterns of power, loci of power and influence in the world, in the nation and in the world, and they still seem to be pretty well concentrated, it seems to me, in relatively
and getting more so, right?
It seems that way to me. That's what I think, and I think it's upsetting because I happen to believe in democracy.
What do you think of the laws in the U.S. which forced the broadcasters to publish both points of view? What was the name of that law? And that was repealed during the Reagan era.
They used to have a thing called the
Fairness Doctrine.
Fairness Doctrine. That was for when you had CBS and you had to put both sides together, or you present both sides. But I don't think they got fair use now, and now there's so many. I think it's more or less gone by the boards, you know. But and what we're getting is very polarized, aren't we? We're getting people only watch. Since there's so much that's available, you watch what reifies your own thinking.
Exactly.
And so you get polarized in that. Absolutely. But I'm still always looking for...
And there's this thing about manufacturing consent. If you
Herman and
Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
So
well, Herman wrote help. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Noam Chomsky and others have said, and Gore Vidal also kind of discusses this manufacturing consent, that you have a goal. In order to create the goal, then you use all means at your disposal to, for example, in the case of Saddam Hussein or Iraq or Muslims in general or Afghans or Taliban, then you demonize them and you run this 24-hour video on CNN, which shows this poor woman and this atrocity being committed, and it goes on over and over for weeks, but right before the invasion.
And they know what they're doing.
And then it says, then all of us feel that, okay, we need to get rid of these murderers and thugs. So how to do that? It could have been a military action with 5,000 Marines, or a kidnapping, or some sort of, but no, we wanted to do carpet bombing and use daisy cutters, which is one level below. And then we said we went there to liberate the women. Well, the first woman who came out against the Taliban after they fell, and says, you know, the women were oppressed, and I'm out here. She recently, a strange thing happened. She recently left Afghanistan.
Oh, really? Okay.
And she said it was safer for women under the Taliban before 2001 than it is now. And I can't live here. This is how bad it is.
This is contemporary. Now,
this is contemporary,
right,
2009. So, but we don't see all those things that are happening. The opium production, where the Humvee goes and stops at the opium field.
Predators coming out of the sky.
Predators
Amazing.
Going out of the sky. You know, 1,000 Pakistanis killed, about 100,000 killed. Injured, 100,000 injured. And then you have about 1 million now dispossessed refugees because of the Predator drones and because of covert operations that Vice President Biden won't talk about.
Yeah, and you had a lot of people coming out of Afghanistan into Pakistan.
Right. And then you have 1 million Pakistanis now in refugee camps. 1 million.
1 million. That's what Ed Dirksen would call real numbers. That's
these are real numbers. So where do you think... and who's taking care of them? They're out in tent cities or out in the streets, just like in the 90s when the USSR invaded Afghanistan. You have about 3.5 million out in the streets in Pakistan. And that's where all of this bad stuff happens, where somebody gives you a brochure and a piece of bread, you start working. We need to take care of the 1 million refugees. We need to really... And we've been talking about it, and we have not created this Marshall Plan for Afghanistan.
End of Charlie Wilson's war, so we got stingers to them. They could knock the brains, and Russia had to go. But then we couldn't get a couple $dollars to put up a school or two.
Right.
That's the problem. They can gin up a war thing. We're used to thinking that way. You can get billions of dollars for that, but to get a long term, and that's what I was thinking when you think about the news and everything. You could put things in a larger context, the human condition and what's going on now, because we had George Kennan, we have strategic thinking, we have all of that kind of thing, and then the things change, and so we're at a very amazing time. I believe the weapon systems that exist, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to follow it. Maybe you could help me find leads to get good modeling.
Sure.
I believe weapon systems that exist now may bring it to more consciousness with this flu thing that's breaking out now that could be manufactured within the human consciousness and so. But I believe weapon systems that exist after 200,000 years of human existence on this planet are now in their completeness if something triggered an all-out releasing of the cave, that their species lethal.
Right. And one of
Do
the
you
things,
think that's true?
Yeah.
Or is that maybe just a thought that's not worth bringing up or something?
Let me just kind of mention something.
It's trying to get at a pattern above all the others. Norbert Wiener said, you want information overload permits pattern recognition. Trying to get at a pattern, if you get it, into the evolution of our whole species and consciousness. That we're at a moment of existential newness in terms of both negative possibility for cutting off this evolution of consciousness that's our species largely, and we're also maybe on the edge of something that's very qualitatively good on the living side or on the positive side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Above the fray of the day-to-day news. That's all.
Two things. One thing I missed, and I'd like to get back to that. You asked me what was Charlie Wilson's War, and I want to get back.
Oh, let them know. Maybe they don't know.
Well,
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, it's a good movie, but the whole movie was around that we got them the Stinger missiles and we won the war. No, it wasn't so. It was 2 million kids from Pakistan and Afghanistan going out and shooting at the Ruskies, and then defeating one of the greatest powers on earth. So it was 2 million kids. There's no memorial for them for the destruction of the USSR. No medals for those people.
I got two friends of mine that were over there. They smuggled themselves in, did film for BBC and Channel 4, and they had a film crew, and they were and they actually fired a missile, and that came at them. They had, and 22 people were killed dead from a missile that came from a gunship. They were there fighting. Wow. I mean, filming that, that thing that was going on. But they did force the Russians out, and it had something to do with the collapse of communism and the Soviet Empire. It was a big turning point after '79 and everything when that happened, and the way in which they can manipulate the Congress and use it. It was a lesson in how Congress works.
It's amazing, Harold. One war in Afghanistan, the first one in 1870. The British Empire.
1879?
1853.
1857. There was a mutiny in 1857.
Battle of Maiwand.
Maiwand.
Yeah,
okay.
that was the defeat of the British Empire, which wanted to occupy Afghanistan, and they said, we know the limits of empire, and withdrew back to the English. This was Lord Curzon's time.
Yeah.
The Second Afghan War led to the total destruction of the USSR and the implosion of the USSR.
Union.
And the Third Afghan War has now bankrupted us with $3 trillion spent in the wars, and there's no end in sight.
Okay, the third being when?
This
Commenced
one.
when? Commenced
2001.
2001 with the Trade Center thing or something? Or
right,
what?
no, with the invasion of Afghanistan.
Invasion of Afghanistan. You think it's a larger template?
No, I'm not saying it's a larger template. Many people have called it the graveyard of empires.
Yeah. I happen to have watched...
It was the Mongols, Alexander, the British, the Russians.
What did they call it? Was it Bactria?
Bactria, absolutely.
It was Bactria. It was Alexander the Great.
Yeah,
it was Afghanistan. And it goes like that. Yeah, I happen to have just seen with some friends of mine the movie Kim. Again, which took place about
Lord
Kirchner.
Kim.
Lord Kim and Mobley Boobly and all that, and the Khyber Pass and all of that. And that's been the heart of what Mr. Kennan would have called the heartland.
Kipling.
Kipling. That was Rudyard Kipling. I mean, it was
Rudyard Kipling, the white man's burden.
Yeah, right, man.
White man's burden. That's why we went there. To civilize these brown boys.
Yeah, you
right?
got it, man. It's amazing the way they do all that. But it's there and everything. I had a relative who was general officer at Kandahar in the 19th century. Yeah. And that was in the Indian service.
And Kandahar is, of course, a corruption of the word Iskandar.
Is it really?
It's Alexander.
Alexander,
Iskandar, and Kandahar.
Okay, maybe the thing is, it's too damned interesting. But you say that 2001 is the third war. You're calling it that way, and we want to get to that because it's a very crucial area, and it's part of. I don't know whether the old geostrategy. You've done some international studies.
Absolutely.
You know the heartland.
Yes.
You know.
Curzon said, "Whoever controls Central Asia controls the world."
Well, it was actually McMahon and those people. They said, who controls the North European plain controls the heartland. The heartland was that part of the Eurasian landmass invulnerable to sea power. You had sea power and land power. He who controls the world island who controls the heartland. That would be up there in Kazakhstan and
Central Asia.
Yeah, Central Asia. And he who controls that controls the world island, the whole Eurasian world island. He who controls the world island. And that's been the basis of the thinking of geostrategic containment.
I personally think that the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, if you take all the stuff out, the bottom line is the United States wanted bases in Iraq and Afghanistan so it could contain China and control Central Asia.
Okay,
and the rich oil resources. If you take the WMDs and the Taliban and all this noise, signal to noise ratio.
Yeah, right. You got it.
Okay, so we take all the noise out and then we say higher consciousness and where have we...
Well, that's going to another level,
So if you look at that, the signal to noise ratio, if you take the noise out, that's what it's all about. Bases in Afghanistan, bases in Iraq, so we could win over some of those countries, some of the Tans in Central Asia, and then contain China for the next 50 years.
Okay, that's interesting. You saw that coming. That would have been
so that's the strategic thing, because apparently around 2050 or before, the GDP of China is going to start rivaling some of the Western countries.
Yeah,
maybe even the U.S. We're not sure, but those are some of the projections.
Yeah. And we've also got this thing where the whole economic donkey cart has been hit upside the head by this recent thing now.
We spent $3 trillion. We spent $3 trillion, and we bankrupted ourselves.
$3 trillion. Now you're talking $3 trillion. Does that include your Iraq?
Iraq and Afghanistan.
You were thinking that thing. All right. Now I can remember back in the 70s, you had Paul Wolfson, and that they were Wolfowitz. Thanks, and the others. That they were talking about invading Iraq in the 70s. They were thought of as the lunatic fringe. They were just a bunch of fringe groups out there, and then they captured the mind, it would seem to me, of the president.
The neocon.
The neocons, right? And I think there's a connection
from and Wolfowitz and Libby and this whole...
And there's a connection to Likud. Likud's back in power in Israel now. I think there's a connection with the Likud because they have a base in that. And so that's thinking, and that's... It was Norbert Wiener who coined that term, information overload, signal to noise or whatever, to see patterns. So you want to see patterns at a larger level, and you're identifying one very important pattern in that assumption that you make.
That's right.
And it's looking at things not in terms of the details, but in terms of a pattern.
Very strategic.
What's behind the strategic thinking of, let's say, the great powers of the United States, and is it correct or not? And I think there's some questions that could be brought in, particularly as it relates to Islam.
Yeah. Well, also, the GWAT, Global War on Terrorism, is now, Muslims call it GWAI, or Create a War in Islam. And I think Bush, when he first started talking about it, he said it's the crusade. And there's a huge perception in the Muslim world that it is a crusade. Iraq and Syria and Iran and Afghanistan and now Pakistan.
Yeah.
So and then Indonesia has also been affected. So some of the largest Muslim countries are affected. They talk about safe havens, and I'm sick and tired of listening to this word. And you make your own judgment whether it's a true word. If 80% of Afghanistan is in the hand of the insurgents, why would they need safe havens somewhere else. If you want to eliminate the safe havens, how about retaking 80% of Afghanistan away from the insurgents or the Taliban or whatever you want to call it? But the blame is being put on Pakistan. Just like when we were losing the war in Vietnam, we were blaming Laos and Cambodia, Kampuchea. And I see an analogy with the bombing of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was essentially all of Cambodia at that time.
Interesting, yeah.
And I see the rise of the Taliban or extremism in that part of the world, very akin to the rise of the Khmer Rouge in Southeast Asia.
Oh God, a horror!
I see, yeah, the Khmer, and those were Buddhists, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Buddhists.
They were
all
Buddhist.
Their peace loving.
And the killing fields, those are Buddhists,
awful.
like 2 million.
Just a million.
Absolutely
Was
horrible.
it 2 million? That many in Cambodia?
Yeah. So the
Awful.
issues are when we do these drone bombings and we go and eliminate. I would like to see a list of the CIA, just like during the war in Iraq, we had 52 cards. I'd like to see 200 terrorists. And then the drone goes in and knocks one off, and I'd be say, good job. But that doesn't happen. What happens is somebody in Langley or wherever is designated is doing his remote control, and he goes and sees a wedding or he does something, and he kills 20 people. Some of them women, some of them children, which are not shown on our media.
That never gets the screen.
So now you've killed 700, 800, 900, 1,000 people, but you've actually injured about 10 times that number.
Or maybe
which is
you
about
broke the toe of one guy who might be possibly a real suspect.
Right. So so they say we've got 12 out of 1,000. The collateral damage is not collateral. That's a horrible word to use for human beings. For human beings, it's a horrible. These are human beings. You know, and now the people, I was talking to somebody, they hear this drone very far away, and they're scared.
Right.
And the women and the mothers gather the children and run inside their mud-thatched houses, and they're hiding there because now they've heard the drone. And can you imagine the fear? You know. Imagine 9/11. Yes. Somebody said, one of the Pakistanis said, 9/11 happens every day. Every day this plane comes. Every day and it bombs or kills or maims. So now you're seeing a depopulation. A lot of these people are becoming refugees, and you see problems. It's the pull and push theory that Peter Senge talked about in the fifth discipline, in systems thinking. If there are drugs on 42nd Street and you go in and do a police raid, the drug dealers do not vanish. They go to 52nd Street and 60th Street and so on. They disperse. And when the police raid is over, they come back. When you bomb Afghanistan, those run over. Wherever they can find refuge, they come into Pakistan. And when the drones chase them there, then they run into the cities. And if you, where will this end?
You
know, so you're going to start bombing Karachi and Lahore. And it's 170 million people. This is not. This is not. You know, if Iraq and Afghanistan was a Sunday picnic, this is 170 million people.
I'm hearing you. I hear you very strongly.
I have a lot of passion on this. That Obama, with all his good intentions and this review of the Afghan policy, is really perpetuating this war, which I call the perpetual mimetic warfare, 1984, or Orwell, which Eurasia and Oceania.
Remember.
You know, it just keeps going on and on and on. I think the thing to do is to create a Marshall Plan, because these people need schools and hospitals.
That was the close. I stress again. That was the close of the Charles Wilson War. You can get billions for drones or for that, and they were able to, but you can't do anything when it comes to schools. Education, and
so we need schools.
Really matter.
We need 1,000 hospitals. Imagine 1,000 hospitals.
Military mindset.
Imagine 1,000 MASH hospitals, which become real hospitals with the U.S. flag, where women who've never been to a gynecologist or children who've never been vaccinated go there and they see the U.S.
This is the metaphor.
You need 1,000 hospitals. You need 10,000 schools. You need good services.
I think that's a metaphor for the world writ large, to tell you the truth. I think it's a thing where we have a technologically augmented capability in an unprecedented way coming out of the knowledge that we're accumulating exponentially.
It has not won us wars.
We have a capability to make the world work for everybody that has not been characteristic of history.
Oh, that's very true.
Do you think?
Absolutely. We have the vision.
Significant to the destructive capability. The weapons are.
We can change the world.
We could in a
positive way.
No, not enough to say we could make a little difference or something, but it is like qualitatively, exponentially, existentially significant. The technologically augmented capability we have of taking care of all the needs of the people, which never have been taken care of throughout history. We have that capability, which is equally relevant to the fact that we now have weapon systems that if there's a miscalculation, 5 or 6 go off from Israel to somewhere or something, and then it goes, we can't stand, and it goes, we might actually have the ability to destroy our entire species.
Absolutely.
Couldn't do it in the Second World War.
No.
Didn't have it. About 1970 we reached that point apparently from the model. So there's something existentially new, and one would look at the pattern level again. What's existentially new in terms of our ability to take care of all the ancient scourges in the population and the ecology, for that matter, in a way that simply our institutions we've inherited out of history do not have, if we reify them, don't give us the ability to do what we're capable of doing, and we need leadership into some sort of thing, even at the level of economic policy. How are we going to form capital? How are we going to distribute income on a large scale so that the needs of the people of the world, everybody, rather than just the few at the top, the upper middle class, us or whatever, are taken care of, that everybody's being taken care of when they never have been well taken care of coming out of history. It's a major moment in terms of the evolution of consciousness.
Absolutely.
Do you think that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's and we don't hear enough of it coming from our intellectuals.
We do not. The silence is deafening.
Right. It is.
The silence is deafening. The Black Plague came and destroyed civilized society in Europe.
Yeah.
And then we had the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
The wholesale destruction of Muslims and expulsion and deportation,
right.
and also Jews.
Yeah.
We had the Jewish-Christian-Muslim symbiosis from 711 to
yeah,
1492.
You're working cross-culturally that way. Yeah, right, yeah. Right.
And then that got destroyed. We have today similar issues in terms of creating malaise and confusion and chaos in West Asia, which may come back and bite us.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I couldn't agree more, yeah.
So we have this opportunity. I mean, Obama has like 80% popularity within the U.S. and beyond.
Yeah.
He has this
all
over the world.
The guys, my daddy would call him a class act. He's a class act.
Absolutely.
And he's got a lot, but I'm not sure that I'm very upset about his seeming to be going along the old way with, particularly when it comes to Afghanistan.
I'm very disappointed. It bothers me a lot.
Yeah, it does me too.
It bothers me a lot. I think
the thinking old time.
It's just continue this Petraeus and Mullen, the continuation of the same policies that have gotten into this trouble and has not worked.
Yeah.
The policy, the lab experiment says that if you tried something and it didn't work and you continue doing that over and over, it's insanity.
Yeah, right.
So we're continuing to do the same thing. We're continuing the bombing. We're continuing this occupation, and we're continuing to support a narco state in Afghanistan.
Yeah, okay.
Where the opium production is in the hands of the warlords, and our armies dare not destroy the bread and butter of the warlords that are sitting in Kabul. I mean, Karzai's brother, Hamid Karzai's biggest brother, has been named by certain people as the #1 drug lord of opium in Afghanistan.
It's validated, or is that rumor?
This is in some of the
Karzai
major newspapers.
Karzai could be in trouble, no? I mean, he seems to be holed up in Kabul, it seems.
There were rumors that he was about to be replaced in this election by forces, and now maybe he's the best puppet we can find.
Now we have
the best Vichy government that we can find.
Vichy government that we can find. Well, that's the way to see it, because you got, I think some international action, I love Ramsey Clark and so forth. He's saying some really good things. He should get the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. But we got sizable military presences in something like 130 countries around the world.
So 700 or more bases or something like that.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, this is a real, talk Rome. Yeah. This is everywhere, and we got this thing. And we do not have a grounding in terms of understanding human affairs sufficient to the tasks that we have set for ourselves. We're still going down these military lines of realpolitik that don't seem to have served us well. And it's also back to the media thing we began with. It's being manipulated. The media is being manipulated by certain people of a certain vested interest, certain geostrategic view of the world that maybe should be re-examined in coming out of the... Who are the people we can repair to now that have an enlightened notion of geostrategic thinking? Who's taking the place of George Kennan, who ruled, for so long? Who's our leader, and who's leading? Is it
in the
Brzezinski?
media, Bill Moyer.
Who is it?
Bill Moyer in the media.
Yeah,
he talks good. Noam Chomsky, of course. Gore Vidal. These are some of the people. There are a host of Amy Goodman.
Amy Goodman,
marvelous.
Really
Angel.
She's really good.
Saint.
But what is her?
Yeah.
Okay, so she can, or Naomi Klein.
Yeah. Naomi Klein. Absolutely.
Or Chomsky or something.
Chomsky,
so what are they going to do in terms of the economic? Economic policy. We're still forming capital in a way.
Yeah.
It's becoming concentrated. We don't have a capital formation capability or a distribution system beyond, what are we going to go to Keynes? Are we going to go to Friedman? You can critique Friedman, but they don't have an economic theory that's ability to unleash a renaissance of capability for all the people of the world. They don't have it. Marx doesn't work, does it? They'll retreat to some sort of notion of socialism.
Right.
What are they providing? What are the intellectuals providing in terms of a new vision that is really worthy of consideration by our power leaders? I don't find it anywhere.
I don't see that.
Maybe I was sorry.
No, I don't see that. One of the things that you said was that communism was dead, and we heard this after the destruction of the USSR. And I recently read an article by the good old nemesis of the U.S., Fidel Castro.
Fidel, yeah.
And old Fidel was laughing, and he was saying, I told you, it says your system doesn't work. Look at your economic system. It is totally bankrupt.
Well, his isn't exactly on top of the world.
Yeah, but
they get some medicine.
They moved 2 million people in during the
hurricane.
You think?
Okay, that's a good point today.
They have the highest, and I'm no Fidel Castro fan.
I know.
I'm no communist, but I'm saying everybody has medical care, everybody has health care, and there's nobody hungry, and there's nobody on the streets. And nobody can say anything against the Castros. There's no total freedom of expression in that sense, but their basic needs are met.
Oh, well, okay, that's a good beginning for a lot of people who don't have their basic needs met.
Right.
I happen to like Muammar Gaddafi a lot. Yeah. I mean, I think he's advanced. I think he's building that thing. We got some models of people that are trying things and everything, but that's traditional. We've been, in the time in which you and I grew up, we've had capitalism, we've had communism. That was the big fight, everything. Right. You still think that socialist thing, we're going like the European Union or something? Is that something? Is that a model that fits the world? Karl Marx, should we go back and read Marx and Engels and that kind of thing?
No, I think the European Union...
Where are we going to get theoretical, particularly economic theory that relates to the reality of a cybernated world and things?
I think Europe has a better model.
You think they do?
Sweden, Denmark, Norway. I think healthcare and basic infrastructure. What are we talking about capitalism right now? Yeah. We own all the banks. We own the major industries in the United States today.
And they've been hit upside the head.
And they've been, so right now, somebody joked about the USSA, Union of Soviet State, and socialist states of America. Yeah. So because we are controlling means of production, and we're controlling the financing, banking, because they couldn't run it themselves. So we're so corrupt. Remember, deregulation. The less government, the better. Well, when you have less government, when you don't regulate, when you let the thieves, then they will come in and destroy it. There should be regulation. And now we're getting back to regulation.
Okay, you think we are. So who is the name? Is it Keynes? Is it free? Everything depends upon the theory of economics.
Yeah, I think the Chicago School of Thought, Chicago is right now in chaos. I think they have lost, good. And they
were like the neocon kind of takeover of the national consciousness.
And they have lost credibility.
Okay, but who's coming to the fore? We go back to Keynes. Mr. Keynes said in 1930 to the grandchildren, you are going to be confronted with massive technologically induced unemployment. Our basic grounding policy state, we're going to distribute all income through the labor theory of value. Practically all economic or political theory is the labor, human input to production is what's important. We distribute income that way. The capital assets are all owned by a tiny plutocratic class everywhere in the world and in the world. So they still going. And Mr. Obama's just talking about creating jobs. He's just going to distribute by labor. but the assets and the ownership of the means of production is still narrowly held everywhere.
Is it true? I read somewhere that 95% of U.S. assets or wealth is controlled by 5% of the people?
I think it would be, in realistic terms, yeah, despite mutual funds and things they've tried to do and everything. But they haven't got a system that it makes it possible to distribute ownership of capital instruments which are producing, well, much less robotics and things that are coming to the people, and then have distribution of income for them to clear the market. We don't have a system that lets us do what we're capable of doing, and we're enthralled to outdated ideas. And I don't see them coming from Naomi Klein or from Chomsky or from any of the critiques. There's a lot of critiques of the system that's not just and everything. We know that. But where's the new thinking I don't see on a world scale? Maybe something from the Islamic community around the idea of interest. There's some things around there that they've held on to that is relevant. And you got a quarter of the world population, and there's a lot of very heavy-duty thinking going in, and there's an all-out war against Islam.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the enemy du jour.
Right.
It used to be the commies.
Yeah.
Now it's the
yellow
Islam.
peril, red peril.
And that's where you see the propaganda going, whether it's coming from Israel. They're besieged. They're under trouble. They're in trouble. That government there. They got a couple hundred atomic bombs.
Yeah.
They're going to do that
so
thing
they're
in
not
Gaza,
besieged.
and they're going to attack Islam. Yeah. And so there's a resurgence against that, and then it's coming up in Pakistan. And I don't know where the vision of a liberated order or what the thinking is behind the intellectual community, whether it's radicals or Chomsky or whatever. What are they proposing? I don't know.
In terms of Israel, I think Israel has issues with its neighbors and with the Arabs.
Absolutely, Islam. It necessarily becomes Islam because you're scapegoating Islam.
And yes, you're scapegoating Islam.
1/4 of the world population.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's 1.5 billion people, and once you scapegoat 1.5 billion, then do you really want a clash of civilizations?
No.
And I don't think Islam wants a clash of. I don't think America wants a clash of civilization.
No.
But all these continuous wars lead us towards wars that are unnecessary, that are killing people on all sides, reducing our standard of living, and destroying infrastructures around the planet.
Right.
So, as a Muslim, as a patriotic American Muslim, I've faced, my company. I had my own consulting organization, $10 million there.
Yeah.
Got destroyed. I feel, in terms of
destroyed.
Yeah.
Why?
In terms of economics and people not wanting to do business by anybody who looked different.
Yeah.
And so
people should realize that's like
and
the
then,
new scapegoating class.
And after 2001, people don't know this, but thousands fled to Canada, and C-130s full of Pakistanis, pizza delivery guys, and simple.
Right.
There's an interesting book called Civil Rights in Peril.
Thank you.
That discusses all these high priority, or even the Attorney General would take them and discuss the Lodi and the Lakwana and all of these, and it turns out that they were just like Prime Minister Brown did in Britain these days. They arrested 12 Pakistanis, and they had nothing on them, zero, and they got deported. They're in the process of being deported. So there's a huge backlash against Muslims who had nothing to do with any of this nonsense.
That's right, and there's a public relations campaign that informs, again, the public and then the decision makers ultimately, and we don't have it. And one of the most crucial areas, the one that you're very familiar with, which is South Asia.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very, that and the Middle East in general, particularly Israel and that kind of, is the most dangerous place in the world, seems to me. I don't know. But it's part of a larger issue.
It's, President Clinton, of all his personal failings and other things, he got the Israelis and the Arabs to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And he almost had peace. And because of the Swiss cheese state that the Palestinians were being offered, they couldn't. It was untenable.
Yeah.
They need a viable state, and they agreed afterwards. One of the greatest intellectuals from Israel is Yuri Avner, if you read. Yuri Avneri. Okay. He was one of the founding fathers of Israel. Yeah, he was, he fought the Arabs.
And I know you're working as an Islamic with a lot of
right,
people,
and we work with Yuri Avneri.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Lerner, Michael Lerner.
Yeah,
we were part of Tikkun.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of good people who are bringing out alternatives. So Obama, if he follows some of the policies of President Clinton and put them in a room, that's what he did in Camp David, and got them to agree to talk to each other. And I mean, there's a radical government now with Netanyahu.
Yes.
And it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
Who's this guy with Lieberman? Who's this guy, this racist Lieberman?
The Lieberman, yeah.
I mean,
these are tough guys.
He's going to be a player.
But there's an old Star Trek episode where where Spock says, you know, only Nixon could have gone to China.
Well, that is.
So you know, you couldn't get a liberal guy.
So what do you? Okay.
So maybe Netanyahu and Lieberman, who are at the right wing or whatever you want to call it, maybe they are the ones. If they go for peace, then the doves will follow for sure. But I think the leadership, the economic leverage, and the leadership from our president, whom I have great hopes for still.
Yeah, I do.
I still have great hopes for him. Yeah. If he can pull them together over there and have an exit strategy in Afghanistan. Exit strategy, that's the word. Exit strategy, exit. Forget about the safe havens and bombings and, you know, chasing the drones, and get rid of these.
Well, he just sent a bunch more troops.
He's ordered 50. Yeah. So you have more targets now, and they know if they have lost control of 80% of Afghanistan, they're not going to win that back with 10,000 troops. The Soviet Union had about 150 to 450, 500,000 soldiers.
They had that many.
That's
what we had in Vietnam.
Right, they had about 150,000 regular, 200,000 somewhere there, regular troops. Then they had the non-regular troops, irregulars, and then they had the Afghan army, which at that point did exist. So they had, and they couldn't control it. They couldn't control it.
That's the pivot point.
So we need 400, 500,000 soldiers. We don't have them.
We don't have them.
We don't have them. Yeah. So the next best thing is, why is it that peace deals in Fallujah and peace deals discussions with the Taliban, with the British and Helmand and Afghanistan are okay, but when the Pakistanis do it, it's called capitulation.
Yeah, okay.
So there's some hypocrisy there. The Pakistanis don't want to kill their own people. They want to engage them. They want to make peace with them. They want to engage them, and after they've engaged them, they want to get them into business and commerce, and slowly this thing will dissipate and reduce itself, rather than if you take the other route, you know, Agent Orange and daisy cutters. This doesn't do it.
Okay, bunker busters.
Or bunker busters.
Yeah, right.
This will not resolve the issue. I'm not a peacenik in any sense of the word. It makes sense from a realpolitik point of view. This war has to come with an exit strategy and an exit door, how to make peace.
Okay, do you see it?
I think some of the bluster is part of the exit strategy. But we are Senator McCain says it best.
Yeah.
Senator McCain said, we can't let them think that we're leaving. The best way to leave Afghanistan is to make them think that we're staying there. So I think some of the announcements...
It begins to get like doublespeak or something. But I understand what you're saying. That's the way it works.
This is an actual quote from Senator McCain.
What is the attitude of the Muslim world? Let's say Muslim, you get Indonesia and everything, all the way to Mauritania and all that, toward what we would call radical Islam, in the sense that there's such a reaction. Perhaps it was just against Mr. Bush, but it was also against an arrogance of power being displayed by the, so that there is a large segment that favors anything that is not kowtowing or bowing down to the United States, and the United States is seen as the thing to be fought against within the not just the radical Islamic world, but the broader Islamic world.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought this up. Listen, I come from Pakistan, and I had my first hamburger at a U.S. base over there, Butter Bear. We used to remember the bases over there in the Tarbela they were building, Banglabdan they were building. And when the GI trucks with the hand clasp of the U.S. sleeve on one side and the Pakistani sleeve went by, you know, little kids, we'd stop and we'd clap. You know, because we really liked, we grew up with this notion of this beacon of freedom, the United States of America, around the world.
It hadn't been particularly a colonial power.
It had not been. It had actually deliberately told Britain and France.
Do you think we're
during the Suez Canal said no?
Yeah.
You will not occupy it, and that ended colonialism as we knew it at that time. So the U.S. was this champion of human rights.
Yeah.
And it was really a beacon.
Do you think we squandered that?
I think we squandered that.
Bush just put the
I think in the past
cake?
years I think even during the Reagan era. Even the Reagan era. It was, all these, you call them Taliban, all the Pashtuns, all these guys.
Pashtuns,
they were all supportive. I remember Brzezinski going and say, we must, the people of the book, we believers in God.
Well, you saw George in Charlie Wilson's war with Murtha. John Murtha's over there. We're going to free it. Yay! And then they shot the Russian ships out of the air by getting the Stingers.
The Stingers. So think about this. So now, all of a sudden, now we have where there's a huge amount of anti-Americanism.
That's what I'm saying.
And not only in radical, but there's anti-Americanism. Every time a drone comes in, all over Pakistan.
Yeah, you're going to make a lot of enemies.
People get very upset.
Yeah, I would if one came into my neighborhood.
But it's a reaction.
Yeah.
It's a reaction.
Yeah, but it's a reaction to our lack of vision.
It's a reaction. I think you put it succinctly and properly. It's a reaction to our lack of short-term gains of getting rid of these 3-4 scoundrels, scum of the earth.
Yeah.
You go and terrorize the entire population.
Yeah, right.
And this is not good thinking.
It's also a war crime.
It is a war crime.
I think that they used to do that, the Nazis, but from the 19th to 20th century, it used to be that for every one soldier killed in the meadow, for every 9 soldiers killed in the meadow, 1 civilian was collateral damage turned in the night. It's shifted. 9 civilians are killed in the war making as opposed to the one that is the soldier.
Correct.
That's a big change.
That's a
and it's
change.
also you're dealing in a world of public relations with the people of the world. They don't have something that.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. Not just the radicals. Although the radicals, remember they called George Washington a terrorist. They called Mandela a terrorist. They always do that. They're going to try and knock out the head or something. But then they don't have a vision worthy of leadership that they can present to the world, it seems to me. I don't know where it's coming from.
Obama has a unique opportunity.
Okay.
I think he is. This is one of the greatest.
Who's he listening to?
I think he's listening to the wrong people. He's listening to the people from the previous administration.
You think there's a
the CIA,
Friedman,
Bob Gates and Mullen and Petraeus.
Who should he be listening to? Or who should he be reading?
I think he should be listening to
Ansari.
Ansari.
Maybe. No, seriously, you got a lot of good stuff on your side.
Well, he should be listening to people like me who've come out. Shireen Mazari. She's a great intellectual from Pakistan.
Okay.
He should be listening to Imran Khan, who's not the greatest politician with a lot of power, but he's talking a lot of sense.
Okay.
He's a Pashtun.
Okay.
And he just recently wrote an article, "This is not our war."
Where does he write?
Imran Khan he used to be a great cricketer.
Okay.
Of cricket fame, and he has his own political party, which is called...
in Pakistan.
In Pakistan, in Tehreek-e-Insaf.
Yeah.
He should be listening to
so
people like that.
So he's being listened to in Pakistan?
Yes, he's being listened to.
Who's being... You've got a president, Musharraf's gone now.
Right, Musharraf.
And so...
Asif Zardari does not have much credibility.
Apparently, he seems to be not too powerful. They're worried about... I hear in the news, just on the regular news, that they're worried that it could become failed state, or it could fall apart or something. Do you think that's overdoing?
I think it's overdoing. I think it's part of this propaganda in terms of creation of this
anti-Islamic sentiment that they want to build geostrategic
Yeah, this turn is actually, now we need to get into another subject, which is this India thing.
Okay, we only got 4 minutes
4
left,
minutes,
so
okay,
let's
I'll try to
deal
do
with
it.
India in 4 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
Because India wants to surround itself with satellite states, just like the USSR did,
and
the US, which had the Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
So they want Sri Lanka as a failed state. They want, and in fact, they're supporting the LTTE, which is the Tamil Tigers.
Right.
They support Bangladesh or issues there.
They did.
In Nepal, they supported insurrection. In the Maldives, and in Pakistan they're supporting the Balochistan.
In South
So that's the other issue. So that term, when you use that term, it really bothers me because it is a term of failed state.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they use it in the media now, and then also that they're saying that the military is very steady and they're geared up to deal with India.
Absolutely, and that's where they should be.
They've been concerned with.
So they don't want to be convinced.
Because India is a threat.
Would you like to come in and tell me who my enemies are? I wouldn't believe what you're saying, right?
Right.
And if I came and told you, hey, your enemies are this is a list of your enemies, and these people are not.
But it's easy, and the people a lot of thinking, well, if they're Islam, they got to be bad.
Yeah.
Because there's this huge propaganda thing against Islam.
Absolutely.
And you're trying to fight against that and saying there's a lot there. I still think there's a lot of things, particularly around this idea of usury and the idea of interest and things. There are Islamic banking
Maybe when we
ideas.
come back, we can talk about that a second.
Well, we haven't got time today to take care of that problem.
Next time, then I'll
But the India thing is, Pakistan is very concentrated upon the threat
because
of
it has
India.
There's occupied
We should
territory
realize
in
that.
Kashmir. That is a
Kashmir's a big
Muslim
issue,
majority area that should have been part of Pakistan.
Yeah.
It was occupied
Yeah.
in 940 after 947.
That's a big issue.
947, and India is supporting
Never got a
miscreants
plebiscite.
in Balochistan. The plebiscite was not
Never,
held. The
never.
United Nations.
Yeah.
There are dozens of UN resolutions which were not implemented.
Maybe the worst record, as bad as Israel's record, and violating UN
worse, much worse.
resolutions.
There are
Worse than Israel.
450 million
Yeah.
untouchable scheduled deletes,
Yeah.
50 million incarcerated women, widows. The things that 40% of Indian territory is in the hands of the Naxalites.
Right, okay.
So the failed state, talk about a
Yeah.
failed state, that's
Yeah.
the biggest failed state there. 75% of the 1 billion people,
Yeah.
75% live less than $1 a day.
Oh, God. Okay, now that's something.
So that's a failed state. We call it India.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, that's the way of seeing it. But we should understand that's what's on the minds of a great number of people in Pakistan is the thing with India. It's still there. That's the big thing they have. And India is not particularly...
They want to stay independent and not become part of another an entity where 150 million Muslims in India are second, third class citizens. So another 60 million don't want to get into that enslavement.
And they had 900,000 troops up in Srinagar.
Yeah,
at
half
one
their
time.
army is in
More
Srinagar.
people than people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's there. And so and Kashmir is a huge issue in the Pakistan consciousness. And Pakistan is very important, and Islam is very important. We should be building some understanding on our part of Islam, because there are probably answers that address the larger things that could be coming out of the academic community of Islam, and we're allowing people who are just scapegoating them in the name of some short-term strategic gain for something. And we shouldn't have continued doing that as a country. We should be more in touch with Islam.
We're the beacon of freedom. We have to look beyond that.
We being the United States. Okay, perhaps so, but then they're beacons of freedom also. But we also have things to learn from other parts of the world, and we have to start thinking...
usury and all these issues. There's a whole hour discussion on this, on usury.
That's a biggie, because when you get down to the economic thing, it has to do with usury. Yeah. And usury...
32% on your credit card doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and that came in, and there are strong strictures against that in the name of the law, still valid within the consciousness of the Islamic intellectual community, and we should pay attention to that. Because
just like Jesus Christ said, he didn't like usury either.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
He did not like usury.
But the point being is there's a unique holding to that principle within the Islamic community, within the intellectual community of Islamic, and we should be paying attention to that rather than just listening to the propaganda being put out against Islam as the scapegoat du jour.
Right, absolutely.
I think that's
100%
important.
agreement on that.
Well, I think what you're doing is really good, and your site is really, let's let them know here in words, I mean in letters, spell it out. It's one really worth going to, because you put a lot of research in touch with a lot of people, and you're also in touch with a lot of people from a Christian, Jewish perspective.
Right,
and that's really important. So what is it again?
Rupee News is the site, RUPEENEWS.com. That's RUPEENEWS.com, RupeeNews.com. And rupee is the currency of Pakistan and India, and Indonesia, and many countries.
And I'm here to say that site is really one worth going to, because it's loaded with good information, particularly recommended. And you have another one you're associated with.
Ajuma.org is my interfaith site where we discuss issues of Jewish, Christian, Muslim interest and focus on the positive things.
Yeah.
That's ajma.org.
Yeah, because that's another important thing. You're in two important confluences of influence that really are important to the world. Thanks a lot for coming in and talking some of these issues. Hope we may have helped. I've learned a lot, and I thank you for the site. I've spent a lot of time there. I've gone, there's a lot there, and I really congratulate you on it.